guests would actually go into the garden, and then they would sit in the waiting hut, in the machiai. There's a small waiting hut over there with an arbor over it. And you would sit there, and then the host would actually ring a bell, and then you would start to come for tea. So you would actually be in the garden for maybe 10, 15 minutes or so. And then you would hear the bell, and you would go, and then there's a little fountain there, which is called tsukubai. And you would use that to purify your hands and rinse your mouth so that you're preparing yourself for tea. And then you would enter. And then you would have, there would be a charcoal building ceremony so that they would build the fire. And then you would go back out to the garden, and then you would come back in, and you would have a full meal. And then you would have heavy tea, which is probably 10 times thicker than the tea they drank today. And then they have light tea. And so this whole tea ceremony would take maybe about 5 to 6 hours.
Here the tea bowl is being offered to the first guests, and that is just because you're sitting the closest, so you'd be first in line. But instead of taking the bowl and just drinking it yourself, you're placing it between you and the next guest, and then you two bow. And this is an idea of saying, excuse me for going first, and you're almost offering the tea bowl to him. And then the bow back saying, no, you can have it, you're pretty much the first guest, you're right here, so it's for you. And so it's about that idea of respect between guests and between the guest and the host, like you're thanking each other for that bowl, so if you two would like to bow to each other. And then before you drink, you place in front of you, and then you bow to me, thanking on behalf of everyone else for making tea for this. So you can bring it in closer to you. Then we bow out of respect. And then you can see there's lots of turning of the bowl, so that was because you try to respect one side of the bowl. Typically, there's a beautiful painting, and so many of the bowls that you'll have today have a more decorated side or painted side. And so out of respect to the artist, you have that towards you so you can view it, but when you're drinking, you'll pick up and place on your left palm. And then you'll turn slightly, so it's about 90 degrees clockwise, and that way the front is now facing the rest of the guests, so they're able to view the bowl while you're drinking. And so then this whole tea bowl is for you. You can drink at your pace. It might be a little warm, so be careful.
So at the start of the ceremony, he cleaned all of the equipment in front of you, but that was really sort of a psychological, spiritual cleaning, and also just get everyone slowed down and kind of in the mind frame of having a quiet, tranquil tea. But now he's doing everything in reverse order. He's actually going to physically clean everything so that you can put it on display for you, and also so it's ready if we were to have another tea after. Moving all the equipment back to where it was when it started. The idea here is bringing everything full circle. And now to demonstrate that he's done making tea, he's going to fold the focus of the tea napkin and place it on top of the cold water jug.
The purpose of the tea ceremony is that it's simply an art form. It's an art form and it's a discipline. And so the practice of tea is basically enacting an art. But the basis of tea ceremony are 4 principles: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. And everything that we do in terms of tea ceremony should surround those 4 principles. So how we interact with one another, how we conduct ourselves, how we interact with objects, how we touch objects, how we interact with nature. We should do this respectfully, harmoniously, with a pure heart. And then by doing all of these things with those principles in mind, we will ultimately reach a level of tranquility. That's what we're striving for, because in our lives, our everyday lives, we don't need tranquil lives. We lead very, very busy lives.
Yeah.
And so the tea ceremony enables us to focus only on one thing. And the one thing is to serve the best bowl of tea, or to have a moment with a host or another person and interact with them through our hearts, not through speaking, not through touching each other, but just through our hearts. And that's really kind of the ultimate goal of tea ceremony, is to feel that. Tea ceremony makes Japanese tea, that's what makes Japanese tea unique, is because we have schools that specifically study tea and how to do tea and how to be a part of that. So it's very different in that way.
Yeah.
It's not just a casual thing that we do. It's an art form. It's a discipline. And so we have to study it in order to learn about it. We can't just go, well, you could just go to a tea house and have a bowl of tea and that's it. And just experience tea like going to any coffee shop in town. But there's a practice and a discipline behind it that people still continue to study today. The garden is a very important part because tea ceremony tries to encourage people to re-engage with nature. Because we live in such a kind of hustle-bustle life, right? We're so busy. But we forget nature is surrounding us at all times. And tea ceremony asks you, slow down. Remember where your roots are from. Re-engage with nature and look at its beauty and its splendor. And it kind of forces you to do that. But in tea ceremony, you're forced suddenly to listen to things that you overlook on a daily basis. That's why the garden is important too. We overlook the fact that there's beautiful trees outside our window at our apartment. When we walk on the quad, there's gorgeous grass and trees, but we ignore them. And so simple things like the water pouring, we ignore those things, but in tea ceremony, suddenly it becomes very important and beautiful, and that's what tea is all about.